Hi everyone, I'm Christina, the Marketing Coordinator at Amfin, and I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all today, and a special welcome back to those who attended our previous webinars. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend today's webinar. You're in for another fun, informative and engaging session with Luke and Richard today. This is the third webinar in our four-part series. We do hope you've been enjoying them so far. I know Luke and Rick have definitely been having some fun with them. Next week is the final webinar of this series, so do keep an eye out for registration announcements via our socials and via email. Just before I do hand off to Luke and Richard, a couple of housekeeping items. As you all know by now, this webinar and our previous ones are CPD accredited with both the FBAA and the MFAA. To ensure you're eligible to earn those CPD hours, please ensure you stay logged in for the entire webinar and look out for our follow-up email. That will contain the CPD codes for you. As has been the case with our previous sessions, we will be having a Q&A at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, you can send it through in the chat or raise your hand. I know we've all been part of a few of these by now, but if you're not too sure, the raise your hand button, it looks like a little hand and it's just found in the top right of your screen next to some of the other functional buttons. If you have any quick questions that arise while Luke and Rick are presenting, feel free to send them through in the chat and they will do their best to address those as they arise. If you have a question that requires a longer or more specific answer, we're happy to take those offline and get in touch with you after the webinar. That's all from me for now, everyone. Off to you, Luke.
Thanks, Christina. Very warm welcome from myself and Rick. We do really appreciate you taking the time out of a busy schedule to join us today. Should be nice and educational and a bit of fun today. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully everyone's managing lockdown at the moment. I know it's all quite stressful. I'm sure you're sick of my face by now, so I changed my hairstyle a little bit today just to keep things interesting. So I hope you all appreciate that. But in all seriousness, thank you again for being here today. Look forward to a good session.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Christina. Good morning, all, and thank you for attending another fun and hopefully informative webinar. Now, I want to start by apologising. I'm not sure how it looks like on the screen, but these button-up shirts are becoming more and more difficult to put on as the weeks go by. So I can definitely say lockdown hasn't been kind to me. You could see me in my pajamas next week, so look out for that. On a serious note, your feedback's really been instrumental in helping us choose the topics over the past 3 weeks and tweaking certain parts of our presentation to make sure that it's both relevant and useful for your line of business. We genuinely hope you're enjoying them as much as we are. Now, I know you're all excited to go over today's topics, so let's go through what we're going to be covering. So today's topics were essentially designed to help you guys put through a good referral to Amfin and what that looks like. So we'll start off with supporting documentation and what our lenders normally ask for. We'll then move to application and notes and break down what that entails. Our final topic is going to be around preparing you for preparing your client for the Amfin experience. And similar to last week, we'll finish off with the Q&A. Hopefully, we'll have some more questions this week.
Awesome.
So it's extremely important to remember that when organising supporting documentation, there's 4 key points to look out for. 1, identification. So like any part of the finance sector, we require current identification. The most common or primary one would be the driver's license. Some lenders will ask for a Medicare to determine if there's any dependents. And in certain cases, a passport can also be useful. 2, income. Now, this may differ from consumer to commercial deals, but the most common ones are payslips, tax returns, notice of assessment, an employment contract if somebody's just started a job, and potentially a payslip from a previous employer. And financials also may be required for all commercial applications. 3, conduct. Now, bank statements. But lenders will ask for bank statements to look at things like running balance. If there's any gambling or dishonors on there, they want to see that. Lenders will also look to verify the amount declared for savings to see if the savings are genuine. They don't really want to see a large cash deposit or transfer from, say, Luke to myself. They prefer to see accumulated savings over a period of time. And lastly, any current or previous loan statements that could be relevant. And 4, verification. So trustees will be required when we're looking at trust applicants. This is how the lender verifies both the trustee and any beneficiaries. A rates notice to prove property ownership, and any visa documentation for applicants still on a visa or have become a permanent resident.
Just in addition to that, anything that you feel is common sense is definitely worth sending through. So as an example, if you have a young applicant and they've got $50,000 in savings, that's definitely something that the lender would want to see. So we can lead in with that. if it's a trust, get the trust deed up front to help us package the deal together and make sure we've got everything correctly structured. And things like previous loan history. In our industry, there's nothing better than previous conduct. The best way to determine future repayments is previous repayments. So essentially, when it comes to previous asset finance, that goes a really long way in terms of getting the client approved. So statements for that kind of stuff is definitely welcome. Some other tips around supporting documentation: definitely pass on any documents you've already received. So a big thing for us, if your client has already sent you a license and a payslip, send it over. We don't want to be requesting stuff that you've already got, because it can get the client quite annoyed if they've sent it already. So send things through. If you are going to collect documentation, make sure that it's thorough. A really bad experience for clients is when the mortgage broker has requested A, B, and C, and we then request D, E, and F. So everything up front is really good to grab. The more supporting documents, the better. So we don't send everything to our lenders. We'll look through the documents, see what's relevant for the application, and what's going to help us get the client approved. So if you have extra stuff, send it through, and our team can definitely look through it to see what's relevant and what's going to support the deal. And just keep in mind, each lender has different requirements. So what you sent on the previous application could be different on this time around. So if you're unsure about exactly what to send through, give us a call and we can discuss exactly what the lender is going to be asked for. One thing I've learned kind of dealing with clients over the 7 years I've been in this industry is they don't mind sending documentation, but they would much prefer it to be all up front. When you ask for things last minute or in dribs and drabs, they can get quite annoyed. So something to think about there. I'm going to start talking about the application and supporting notes that we like to see when referring a deal over to us. So just some tips and tricks as to how to best put it together. When it comes to notes, they should include what the client expects out of the loan. So if they have any rate expectations, they might ask for 3 or 4%. It's good to know up front. Any fee expectations. So some clients want no exit fees or no monthly fees. There are certain lenders that offer that, so that'd be good to see in the notes as well. And also speed expectations. So if there are any time pressures or any deadlines, definitely worth noting in your notes for the deal, so we can guide our search in terms of the lender and make sure that we're all aligned with the speed and turnaround time you need. The asset that the client is looking at, it's good to know up front. So the make and model is good. Also the age of the asset, as that will change what lender we look at and can help us narrow our selection. And also the client might not have exact asset in mind, they might just want a pre-approval. In that case, it's good to give us a range of assets they might be looking at. So, they might want a new ute between 2013 and 2015. That might be something that we would then consider when we pick the lender. So definitely put that in your notes as well. Another really good point of note is the strengths and weaknesses to the application. So it's interesting that the application itself doesn't always capture everything. If the client's had a previous A-rated loan, it's not going to be on the application, but that would be something that you put in your notes, so we can reference that when we talk to the lender. Also, any adverse credit, previous bankruptcies, defaults they might have, things to look out for. So anything like that, good to put in the notes as well, so we can be prepared, as that will help us pick the right lender. And anything that's a point of note. So if they've had a recent newborn, if they've changed their job recently, anything that we can lead in with when it comes to building rapport and having that conversation, definitely worth noting when you submit the application to us. I guess the last point here before I move on is good notes really make us feel like an extension of your business. So the better the notes, the warmer that introduction call is going to be. So an example would be, it's Luke calling on behalf of John from XYZ Mortgages. He mentioned you're looking at a brand new BMW and you just finished a loan with Macquarie. When the client hears that kind of familiarity and they understand that we're on the same page, things come across a lot warmer and it makes them feel like we're really knowledgeable and us and your team are on the same page. So that's what we're aiming for here when it comes to notes on the deal. Moving forward, this is an example of a note. So if you are going to structure a note, something like this would work really well for our team. I'll just read it out loud so you can see how it sounds for us. Hi team, my client John is looking at a new BMW X5 around 105,000. He will be trading in his current X5, which he owns outright. He test drove one last weekend and he's talking to a few different dealers. I have recently refinanced his mortgage, so I have attached current payslips and ID documents. He is available after 4:30 p.m. to chat. Regards, referrer. So when our team sees that, they know quite a bit about the deal. When they speak to the client, they can say, how was the test drive? Which dealers are you speaking to? How are the negotiations? And they're also making sure they're calling at the right time. So it's all, very much on the same page, and the client feels like we're quite informed. So notes like this are definitely a pretty good example of what to put through. Moving on to the application. So when it comes to applications, there's a few really good things to look out for. The first one is making sure that it's thorough. So when it comes to clients, they can often forget liabilities. So credit cards, personal loans, other asset finance commitments. Really double checking that you've gone through and checked everything with the client will help us get a really good picture of the deal. So think about that. If you are uncertain about liabilities, a really good tip is to look at the credit file. So the credit file will have recent inquiries. It'll have any current loans that are reported comprehensively. So that might be a good place to start in terms of guiding your investigation and making sure that your application is complete. Another thing too is the structure of the application. So if a client wants to apply under a company or under a trust, or instead of a single applicant, they might want to go as a co-application. Really understand that up front, because we don't want to receive an application for client number one and then have to double back and add their partner on, subsequently. It's much better to get that all up front, so it's all together and we can pick the lender and give them a better experience. So some pretty good tips there. Moving forward, when taking commercial applications, we get asked a lot about, do we need assets and liabilities for directors? The answer to this is yes. In our space, our low doc loans and commercial express loans very much rely on the assets and liabilities of the director to be able to fit policy. So things like asset backing, things like cash in the bank and previous lending. So for a director, definitely grab the assets and liabilities. Also, you will need 2 directors as a minimum for any directors, any directorships that contain more than 2 directors. So a company that has 5 directors, 2 is normally enough. There are some lenders that will just be happy with 1, but they're very small and far between. So if you're not sure, give us a call first and we can talk to you about that before you refer it in. The last thing to note on commercial applications is any shareholders that hold more than 50% shares. Sometimes these people aren't listed as directors, so they are still a controlling entity, and we would need to understand who they are and get a full application for them as well. So something to think about before referring that deal on. Now, I'm going to pass on to Rick just to talk about the best way to prepare your client. But before I do so, I want to just give an example of how I rationalize this and kind of what resonates with me. I like to think about it as a mechanic. So if I'm referring a mechanic to one of my friends and he says, Luke, who do you use? I say, go to Richard. He does all my cars. I've used him for 10 years. He's affordable. His work is very clean. He's very honest. Then my friend's going to go to Richard's mechanic shop and automatically going to trust him, not query too much about pricing, really, expect a good experience and be quite warm to Richard before he kind of goes to that mechanic shop. We like to think about it like that. The more trust we can build before speaking to the client, the better. So something to really think about before you refer the deal on. Over to you, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Really good analogy. So that's probably the most crucial part when referring a deal to Amfin. Your client trusts you, so we want you to paint that picture of who Amfin is and what we do. Let them know how knowledgeable we are when it comes to all things asset finance. Tell them we've got access to over 55 lenders. So essentially, if anyone's going to get a deal approved for them, it's going to be Amfin. Inform them that we're an extension of your brand and we handle all your asset finance deals. And most importantly, let them know our values. We're honest, we're transparent, and we're efficient. And these values resonate with all our people in our workplace. It's also important to communicate any of your clients' expectations up front. These include things like any rate expectations, which Luke's already discussed. You can discuss pricing with us prior to referring to your client, so you can engage the rate and the lender. And if you're not comfortable to do that, we can handle it from start to finish for you guys. Any current competition. So if you know your client's talking to a dealer or to another broker, let us know prior to us making that initial call. That'll help us steer the conversation from the outset. And definitely call or reach out to our sales team prior to setting any expectations in terms of timeframes. The last thing we want, well, I'll give an example of that essentially. So if your client's picking up the car on Saturday and you've called us on Thursday, call our sales team first. So one, we can let you know if the deal's doable or not. And two, help you understand what rate we can get it done for before you're making any formal commitments.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Rick, that you raised, because as we all know, and it's the same in the mortgage space, certain lenders are faster than others. So we definitely have lenders that can turn things around quite quickly. Sometimes there's a premium in terms of the rate in order to get that facility access. However, we can discuss that with you up front just to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's one of those things where, the more we know about the urgency of the deal, the better. I've had plenty of clients who have got a four-wheel drive that they're looking to pick up on the weekend for a family camping trip. Myself and my team, we don't want to, break any hearts or make any children cry. So if you can help us be aware of that up front, so we can definitely make sure that we push as hard as we can and we pick the right lender up front, the family trip goes ahead and everyone's happy. So something to think about there. Another really good example when it comes to preparing your client is just the ongoing maintenance of the client to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're working together as a team to get the best outcome for your customer. A really good point of note here is that you hold the relationship. So before speaking to us, they've obviously been dealing with you for quite some time and they like and they trust you. So often your influence over the deal can be a key to getting a really good outcome for the client and a key to us getting that settled for you quite quickly. So the first thing to think about is unresponsive clients. If I've been trying to call a customer on your behalf and I've tried, 2 or 3 times, you could get on the phone and say, Mr. Customer, Luke tried to call you on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Can you please give him a call back at 4:30? He needs to speak to you to get an application and keep things moving. And then because of that relationship, it's very likely that the client will give us a call back. Missing documentation. So if a lender comes back requesting some additional documents, often that can cause a deal to be held up and not run as smoothly as possible. So a phone call from you saying, you saw that email from Luke, can you please send him back the notice of assessment ASAP so we can get this all approved? That can go a long way in terms of speeding things up. Navigating competition is a really important one. It's something that's worth noting. When we compete with dealerships, convenience is their main strong suit. They can turn things around quite quickly because there are clients in front of them and all the paperwork's pretty much ready to go. The best way to combat that is by pulling on the relationship string, which you obviously hold. So the dealership might be more convenient or maybe slightly more affordable, but if they want to keep that relationship going and have you as their partner there for their next car, their caravan, their motorbike, another refinance for a different mortgage, they'll feel like they want to keep everything in-house with the same providers, and we can, leverage that relationship there to win the deal. So something to think about. Also, any issues. So whenever anything goes sour or goes negative on a deal, getting your assistance there is definitely really important. We'll always speak to you up front when a deal is declined or if the client's not approved for the amount they would like or the rate they were expecting. We have that chat with you up front. It's really important to get you on the same page. So we call you first, explain, Mr. Broker, your client has unfortunately been declined because of X, Y, and Z. However, if we wait 6 months, we can definitely try again. And then when we speak to the client and deliver that message, if they double back to you after that and discuss why they were declined and kind of what's happened, you're on the same page, you can sing off the same hymn sheet, and then we can both encourage the client to come back to us in 6 months' time, and the experience isn't so bad. So something to think about there. Moving forward, I just want to discuss why all of this is important. So, a lot of these things are taken quite seriously by quite a few of our referrers, and we do really appreciate the effort that goes into keeping things accurate and helping us, put a deal together. But for those who are quite new to the industry or haven't worked with us before, I just want to cover off exactly why we look for this kind of support. So, number one, and this is at the forefront of everything that we do, is to deliver a great service. So all of this stuff that we're speaking about is designed to help your client and get them a really good outcome. So, not drip feeding information and requests. As I mentioned before, we want them to feel like we're knowledgeable, we're professional. Getting everything up front helps that feeling a lot, and make sure that they feel like we're on the same page and we're not double handling stuff. Number two, double handling. So we don't want to be going back and forward to the client for the same thing. It's really important that we understand what you've got already in terms of documentation, so we're not annoying the client and asking for unnecessary things. Number three, and this is probably one of the most important things, accurate information can help us get the best deal for the client. So if we have all the facts in front of us, we can then workshop with our lenders, find a really good deal. There are certain times where we would pick lender A, but if we had known fact X, Y, and Z, we would have gone to lender B. So knowing all those things up front really does help us get the best deal for your client and make sure that the service is there and they're happy with the option that we've delivered. And I guess number four, the more in sync that we are in terms of requests for information, rates and repayments, turnaround times, all that kind of stuff, the better the experience for your client. We really do want to feel like an extension of your brand, and the more accurate your information up front and the more documents that we have, the better chance we have of feeling that way. So really important to note. And the next point to raise is we like to be really accurate to assist our lenders. So I don't know if you've dealt with me in the past, but one thing I can definitely say wholeheartedly is I do care about our lenders and our BDMs and the analysts that work for these lenders. I do make sure that the relationship is strong, and that's kind of what's helped me be so successful in placing deals, because I have that rapport with the analysts at these lenders and have a bit of a relationship there. And that relationship has been built on accuracy and making sure that I'm painting the picture up front. So we want to make sure the lender's got full visibility into what the deal looks like, all the documents that they need, and they're not having to go back and forward with us to kind of get dribs and drabs. It's all there and it's easy for them to assess. We essentially want to be able to do the analyst's job for them. So they can look at the deal and say, tick, tick, tick. I can see Luke's done all the work up front, and this is a very easy deal for us to approve. So something to think about there. Number two, accurate information helps us push for an outcome. So there might be times where a lender says we only want to lend to X amount, or the rate's going to be Y. We want to be able to have all the tools that we can in front of us, so we can push back, ask for a better deal, ask for a larger borrow, a better rate, those kind of things, and just make sure that when we're dealing with our lenders, we can paint the whole picture up front and that it's all there. So something to think about. The last thing too, just to point out, is that lenders do track first time approvals. So they measure us as a broker on how many of our deals get approved first pass and how many of our deals they have to request extra things on or go back and forward on. And that percentage of first time approvals can actually affect speed of approval and how much preference we get, as well as rate cards and other things in the future. So we like to make sure that we're trying to get as many deals as we can approved first time. It gives the lender a better experience, the client a better experience, yourself a better experience, and just allows us to maintain that professionalism that Amfin represents, and I guess be in line with your brand. So that's pretty much it from a content perspective. Once again, I really do appreciate you spending time with us today. Hopefully you found that quite informative. We really do look forward to seeing you next week for our final webinar, and hopefully we can deliver some more educational content. I'm going to pass back over to Christina now just to discuss steps for the Q&A, and hopefully we get some more questions this time around.
Thanks, Luke and Rick. As I alluded to earlier, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand, or you can send it through in the chat. If you do raise your hand, I will enable you to unmute yourself, which you can then do by clicking the unmute button that'll pop up when you hover over your speaker box or in the top right of your screen.
Perfect. We might just allow for probably 20 to 30 seconds of questions. How did I get so handsome is one I get frequently asked, but we can take that offline and discuss that at length. And while we're just waiting for any questions, we really do appreciate your time spent with us today, and we hope everyone is managing through this kind of tumultuous time. Our team is here to support. If you want to talk about anything or have any further chats, definitely reach out. We're here to assist you and your clients, and we really do appreciate it. Got a really good question here from Sanjay. So just to do with trust deeds, I'll just read that out for everybody now. So trust deeds to be certified, and if yes, who can? So really good question. Sanjay, that depends on different lenders. So certain lenders will just accept the trust deed with no certification. They're happy to just look at it and understand, the contents. clarify trustees and beneficiaries, and that's pretty much it. Other lenders will require the trustee to be certified. Most of the time this has to be done by a JP or a CPA. Unlike licenses, it can't be done by a post office worker or a police officer. Often it has to be of a JP or CPA variety, but it does depend on the lender. So if you have a situation like that, give us a call and we can definitely talk about the stipulations there. I'll leave another probably 10 seconds for any other questions that come up. Okay, guys, have a really good Thursday. Thank you again for your time. Please look out for the email for next week's webinar. Christina, anything else to close before we end the session?
Just would like to say thank you again to everyone for attending, and yeah, do look out for that follow-up email today that you'll be receiving. That will contain the CPD codes for you and the invite for next week's webinar, as you said, Luke.
Awesome. Thanks again. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.